I'm Senior Life Sciences Analyst John Vandermosten, joined by Dr. Laxminarayan Bhat, the CEO of Reviva Pharmaceuticals. There's a lot going on in the life sciences and in the CNS space, but Dr. Bhat, let's start with basics. What is schizophrenia?
Yeah. John, thanks for having me here. So, schizophrenia is a very serious, debilitating mental illness. Globally, around 24 million suffer from schizophrenia. US alone, close to 4 million. In Europe, around 7 million. So, global market for schizophrenia is currently approximately around $12 billion. Antipsychotics market close to 40 billion. So, despite having a few multiple drugs currently available, the treatment has significant unmet needs, like ability to treat, especially the chronic condition. One thing the schizophrenia differentiates from other symptoms, other diseases. So schizophrenia is not a single disease. Rather, it is a mix of multiple symptoms, and there is a quite heterogeneity in this cluster of symptoms. So if a drug can't address all these major symptoms, such as positive symptom, negative symptom, depression, and cognitive dysfunction, the treatment becomes incomplete. That's what we see with the currently available treatment options that lead to a kind of a treatment discontinuation rate is very high, anywhere around a 30% to 70% over a long treatment time. And then also on treatment in 1 year, around 25% patients discontinue medication. In over 5 years, up to 90%. When I say over 5 years, schizophrenia is a lifelong treatment in most patients. So with the currently available treatment options, these patients have limited choice to have a lifelong treatment without having much side effects and then beyond treatment. So the next generation treatment expectation is to have broader efficacy to treat these major symptom domains with a acceptable safety profile that would help them to manage a lifelong treatment.
What are some specific examples of the positive and negative symptoms that you mentioned that we might see in a patient that has schizophrenia?
Often the positive symptoms are, do you see audio and visual hallucinations? That is a kind of noticeable in these patients. It really bothers them. You see that they are really disturbed and agitated with that. Mm-hmm. So negative symptom is kind of you can call it as even though you see the patients are agitated, but it's kind of in the background where patients do not draw any pleasure with any activities, and then more sort of a depressive components associated with that. And then they do have a significant cognitive dysfunction as well. So all these things are chronic conditions associated with that affects their social life. This is one of the major symptoms what we see with negative symptom associated.
Okay. And one other thing I wanted to ask as part of the intro, what's the market size in terms of dollars for schizophrenia and potentially even related disorders?
So schizophrenia, it's currently around $10 billion. US alone close to $6.5 billion. Okay. It is expected in the next 2 years to grow around 2 billion more to 12 billion. Mm-hmm. So when you mentioned about schizoaffective disorder type, schizophrenia, a broad spectrum drug in the sense it has a reasonable efficacy for negative symptom or depression, also got approved for other indications such as a major depressive disorder and bipolar. That's the way the drugs are developed from. First got approved for schizophrenia, and then based on the efficacy outcome, later developed for bipolar and major depressive disorders. So when an antipsychotic goes beyond schizophrenia to other indications, generally you call it as antipsychotic market. That means it is beyond schizophrenia. Currently, antipsychotic market is close to 40 billion. Schizophrenia alone, 12 billion. Major depressive disorder around 15 billion. And then bipolar disorder close to $10 billion market.
How do you classify brilaroxazine as a drug, compared to what's already approved for schizophrenia?
So that's quite challenging. If you look at historical classification, pure dopamine targeted antipsychotic classified as a typical, and then later in late 90s, antipsychotics also developed, also showed serotonergic activity. But serotonergic activity, when you look at the currently available treatment options, they call it as a drugs developed later part of 90s and then till today with the serotonin and dopaminergic activities, they're called atypical antipsychotics. Earlier to that, dopamine selective called typical antipsychotics. But a newer antipsychotic approved recently that is called Cobenfy, that is not dopamine active directly, even though the ultimate goal is to modulate dopamine activity, but not directly modulating dopamine. So, but the ultimate goal in the treatment of schizophrenia is to modulate and then balance dopamine serotonin signaling in the brain. So having said that, the second generation drug or the drugs developed later part of 90s to today with the serotonergic and dopaminergic activities called atypical antipsychotics, but these drugs at therapeutic dose really do not have an appreciable activity for other than 5-HT2A. But one thing is common.
One of the key receptors there.
Yes, one thing is common. Most these antipsychotics have good activity for 5-HT2A and then dopamine D2. But other receptors, because dopamine, serotonin, there are other subreceptors. They do have a specific domain and then functional activities that relate to some of the symptom domains in schizophrenia. For example, 5-HT2B and then 1A and then 5-HT7, they are related to chronic conditions as negative symptom. They mediate these symptom clusters, negative symptom, depression, and cognitive. They are highly expressed in the neural network. Similarly, with the dopamine D4 is also implicated in this cognitive dysfunction and then negative symptom and depression. So it is important to have activities to beyond dopamine D2 and then beyond 5-HT, serotonin 5-HT2A activity, these dopamine serotonin subreceptors to have effective treatment for schizophrenia. That's what we try to come up with a drug that has a broader activity so that these chronic conditions are addressed. And then we believe that is very well translated based on the data available, very well translated beyond positive symptoms, what most antipsychotics address. And then with our drug, with having potent activity for 5-HT2B, that's one of the receptors expressed in neural network, also implicated as an upstream target for mediating neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation is a very significant part of mental illness, including schizophrenia. At least to my knowledge, based on the current clinical literature, if a drug can address neuroinflammation, it can significantly enhance the efficacy, in general as a broad spectrum efficacy, but also significantly mitigate some of the side effects, including motor side effect, what these patients experience.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that neuroinflammation can actually affect the impact of the drug?
Yes. Now, neuroinflammation, there are two parts to that. One is, some researchers believe neuroinflammation can cause schizophrenia, or neuroinflammation can further aggravate schizophrenia. But regardless of the debate whether it causes schizophrenia or it aggravates schizophrenia, but one thing is real. These patients do have significant neuroinflammation. And then longer they suffer, they are likely to have more systemic inflammation that will create some other health problems, them, such as metabolic disorders, autoimmune diseases. So that's the reasons, one of the reasons why these patients, longer they suffer from schizophrenia, they are likely to have multiple health problems.
Okay.
That further complicates and then creates challenge for treatment of schizophrenia.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in other words, addressing neuroinflammation certainly has
Can solve a
significant
lot of the
benefit.
comorbidities, I
Benefit,
guess.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the shortcomings of a lot of the approved drugs is that they don't fully address negative symptoms. And based on the data that we've seen so far from your phase 2 and phase 3, it appears that brilaroxazine does have an impact on that. Why don't you explain that, how brilaroxazine helps with negative symptoms and the unmet need there as well?
Sure. So at the beginning, when we discussed about the mechanism, certainly from first generation drug where pure dopamine selective to second generation drug with the 5-HT2A activity, it certainly benefited patients in addressing to some degree negative symptom and depression. But the amount of the activities for serotonergic activity, it's not sufficient enough to address negative symptom and depression. That's what treatment is incomplete. So why I say incomplete, if you look at, pick any drug currently available, often with the total PANSS score as a primary endpoint, this drug got approved to market. So these are acute patients treated in hospital. And then at that time, positive symptom is the major symptom domain, even though these patients have at varying degrees of negative symptom. But the primary goal is to address positive symptom and then get these patients out of hospital. So that's what most of the drugs, primary endpoints you can assured of. So the challenge comes once they get out of the hospital through acute symptoms. The negative symptoms, if not addressed properly, then treatment becomes incomplete. After a few weeks or months, they end up in again hospital because of the relapse.
Right.
So that means the serotonergic activities to address negative symptom is suboptimal with these drugs. With our drug, at least when we designed this molecule, we noticed that beyond 5-HT2A at a therapeutic dose, if we are able to improve the D4 activity, 5-HT2B activity, and then 7, this can immensely benefit these patients to address depression component that is very closely associated with negative symptom, and then vice versa. So we have potent activity for 5-HT2B that's almost 3 times more potent than dopamine activity. So that 5-HT2B further benefits these patients considered as a upstream target for addressing neuroinflammation. So the combination of addressing directly the negative symptom through serotonergic activity, addressing neuroinflammation. So our drug benefited these patients in providing a broad spectrum efficacy, going beyond positive symptom to negative symptom, depression, and cognitive function. So when I say this beyond positive symptom, what evidence we have? So we have completed multiple trials in 2 randomized trials in acute schizophrenia patients in 4 weeks, kind of identical protocol. And then long-term treatment in stable schizophrenia. Stable schizophrenia patients are reflective of you treat patients, they get out of the hospital, and then they need medication for a long time. They take medication at home. So in the real world experience. So we have seen a sustained efficacy in these patients treating over 1 year. When I say sustained efficacy, if you look at the clinical literature, pick any approved drug currently in the market, on treatment, in 1 year, it is reported around 25% patients discontinue, and then discontinue with the relapse, they end up in hospital. So we hardly seen any patients got relapse over 1 year treatment. That means the efficacy with our drug is sustained and durable. that is the biggest benefit to these patients. So that means even though these patients require medication for a longer time, but avoiding relapse is a significant benefit. And then that translated in good compliance as well. If you look at our treatment adherence or a discontinuation rate, it is 50% less discontinuation compared to any other approved drug to date in the similar trial.
Yeah, and we took a look at that actually in some research and did do some work to compare it, and brilaroxazine did show much higher compliance than other atypical antipsychotics. So I mean that's important because if you're not taking the drug, you're not going to get the benefit, right?
Correct.
So are there any other takeaways from the trials that you think is important? Perhaps the primary endpoints. I don't know if you'd like to summarize those, but it'd be interesting to hear kind of the takeaways from the trials and the safety trial that you think are most important.
Schizophrenia, as we discussed, it is not a single disease. This is a mix of multiple symptom domains. The clinical trials, the way you conduct clinical trials, often you get the outcome. So what's that mean? A well-controlled clinical trial with a quality of patients enrolled conducting trial, they are important. When I say quality of patients, in our trial, if you look at, we have a good mix of negative symptom patients we have put biomarkers assessment as well in the trial. If you look at the data, I believe we are the only company generated biomarker supported negative symptom efficacy. What we did in our trial, we using the vocal biomarker because schizophrenia patients have signature speech pattern. We call speech latency. So out of 411 patients enrolled in phase 3 study, using biomarker, we identified 220 patients had a high degree of negative symptoms.
Now, was this done before treatment, during treatment, or after treatment?
This is from screening to
okay, so you measured them at different points, prior, during, and then
so the way we measure it is before coming into the trial, when we enrolled, and the day 4, day 7, 14, 21, 28, so and then 35. So we measured the biomarker in that. So multiple time points, it's very consistency in that. So we tracked the improvement using these biomarkers. So this is again, the analysis was done after the study completed. So this is a double-blind controlled trial. So the data generated really supports drug has robust efficacy for negative symptoms. That's the most difficult. When we say negative symptoms...
So it helped improve, brilaroxazine helped improve
So we need to be very careful in interpreting the negative symptom data. When I say careful, so negative symptoms, some of the other drugs also showed efficacy, significant efficacy for negative symptom. But the thing is, there are, if the negative symptom efficacy is not sustainable, possibly the initial efficacy, what we have seen with other drug, that may be related to secondary negative symptom. Secondary negative symptoms are not the core negative symptom. Core negative symptoms are difficult to treat. This biomarker, what we put, they are identifying core negative symptom, not the secondary negative symptom. So with this biomarker, we identified the core negative symptom, and then we saw the treatment effect with our drug really robust. I believe that that benefited these patients to be on drug over 1 year, and then sustain durable efficacy we have seen because of that. Good efficacy for negative symptom.
And I think there are a few other biomarkers that you're looking at, and biomarkers are extremely important because it can help, first of all, identify patients, and I know you're probably not using it for that, but it can also help identify if the drug is working or not. What are some of the other biomarkers that you're using? And I think you mentioned neuroinflammation and just inflammation in general, and I think there may be cytokines or interleukins or CRP that come into play too, that can show the efficacy, and sometimes patients have higher levels of these, and you can help identify patients. Maybe you can help us understand how brilaroxazine addresses those and how you can take those biomarkers and modify treatment to get the best out of it.
Yeah, you brought up a very interesting point, whether we can use this biomarker to enroll patients. That is a very good approach. Possibly, the technology is not matured enough to deploy in that way, but still, we can use the current technology, that biomarker-based speech latency technology, to enrich patients in schizophrenia. What's that mean? By using this technology, we can have whether the patients have significant negative symptoms in a total patient population, and then analyze those patients to get a further greater degree of confidence on the quality of the enrolled patients and then treatment effect. So now coming to, this is an independent of clinician assess. That's the further complementing or reassuring or confirming the clinician assessed data. That is a really good thing to have. Now, we would deploy this one. We intend to do a separate study for negative symptom. We would use the speech latency biomarker for enriching patients. And then blood-based biomarkers, they are very important, but they are not selective to negative symptom. But patients who are longer, they suffer from schizophrenia or maybe high degree of negative symptom, they're an indication that patients have a long history of schizophrenia. They are likely to have more systemic neuroinflammation. And then also, there are other hormonal imbalance you can to a great extent relate to that. One is prolactin, other one is thyroid. Thyroid may be the most relatable chronic dysfunction we have in this patient population. So in our study, we have evaluated both in the phase 2, phase 3, and then in the long-term study, prolactin and thyroid hormone. We have seen the consistent data decrease in prolactin, and then maintain the level, healthy patients level over 1 year. That's very important. Some of the drugs decrease prolactin in the trial, double blind, but after a few weeks, prolactin level we have seen going up. In our case, that we have seen decrease in prolactin in the acute patients in 4 to 6 weeks, and then it maintained the normal level over 1 year. That means that it is very well translated. When you maintain the prolactin level, you expect to have, to a great extent, thyroid hormone level as well to improve. Most schizophrenia patients suffer from hypothyroidism. As long as patients suffer from hypothyroidism, these patients will struggle to recover from negative symptom, struggle to recover from depression, and then it's also
I think they gain weight too.
Yes, correct. This is a binge eating,
factor.
depression, and then it connects to cardiac side effects as well. So in general, if you can improve the thyroid hormone level, if you can improve the prolactin or decrease the prolactin level, it benefits patients. That's what
it's a whole host of other things that it's having a positive impact on.
And then most importantly, the prolactin level also interconnected to neuroinflammation and then thyroid. So we have
it's a feedback loop.
Yes,
too.
correct, exactly. There is an interplay between the prolactin, thyroid, and the neuroinflammation or cytokines. We have seen all these three in the right direction improve.
Yeah.
So that we believe it is a mechanism based, not just accidental or just isolated. So that is with the 2 large studies with the 400 plus patients, so the data what we generated, that is really a convincing evidence to our knowledge, the robust efficacy, broad spectrum efficacy to treat major symptom domains in schizophrenia. And then that certainly helped in mitigating motor side effect. It's often we call dopamine targeted drugs are known to cause motor side effect at varying degrees. We haven't seen hardly any motor side effect in the phase 3 study, less than 1% by treating over 1 year. So again, good endocrine side effect profile, that means related to hormonal balance, and then a good metabolic profile, except a benign weight gain of around a 1 to 1.5 kilo over 1 year. We haven't seen other metabolic side effects such as increasing lipid. What we see with other antipsychotics, we have decrease in lipid profile, cholesterol and LDL. That's the good profile you expect to have. While most other antipsychotics are known to cause elevated blood sugar, we don't see those things with our drug over treating 1 year. It is comparable to baseline or a placebo. And then while some of the antipsychotics are known to cause cardiac side effects, because cardiac side effects are very concerned in this patient population, because these patients suffer from multiple diseases. They take multiple medication. Cardiac's clean profile is very important. By treating close to 900 patients, we haven't seen any clinically significant cardiac side effect. So overall, we have a very clean profile, except the benign weight gain with 1 kilo, little over 1 kilo over 1 year. We believe that is related to diet, not related to the mechanism.
Yeah, I think you had said that these individuals who are on the trial actually have 3 square meals a day, and they may not have had access to that when they weren't in the trial.
So this clean profile and then the efficacy, safety, compliance, we believe this is a broader activity profile. So drug is ideal to develop separately for negative symptom. Currently, there is no approved drug for negative symptom. So, and then we believe based on the strong data generated to date with a single trial, we hope to get approval for negative symptom. And then we are very optimistic that very promising data. This can be readily developed for bipolar and major depressive disorder as well.
You have a meeting with the FDA set up sometime in the fourth quarter that may allow you to submit based on the data you've already generated, the phase 2, the phase 3, and the safety study. Share with us what steps you need to do over the next few months to get the FDA's clearance to submit a new drug application based on what you already have.
Sure. We have, as we announced in the recent second quarter earnings release, we have currently a set date for a Type B meeting with the FDA. So we expect to have FDA meeting outcome in December. So we believe based on the 2 randomized positive outcome on efficacy and then a good safety profile, including long-term efficacy and a safety profile. When I say long-term efficacy, it's not a double-blind trial. It is primarily focused on safety, but still with the biomarkers and an efficacy generated consistencies there in the long term. So with this data, we believe we met the statutory requirement for filing an NDA.
Can you just clarify what those statutory requirements are?
If you look at the ICH guideline, including the FDA guideline, it's not really specific to phase 3. The guideline clearly states you need to have 2 randomized trials.
Which you have.
That is for to see whether you are able to reproduce the data from the 2 trials. We have reproduced. If you look at our phase 2 data, primary and then key secondary endpoints, are kind of data is comparable. And then another criteria is a 1-year treatment with at least 100 patients completed, and then 300 patients for 6 months. We have 303 patients completed 6 months treatment. 159 patients completed 1 year.
This is
50% more than what is needed. Means a regulatory requirement. So that's what we believe. We met statutory requirement of what is needed for filing an NDA. Again, the agency is the ultimate authority to review and then approve. That's what we are. We reached out to agency. We have already received the Type B meeting scheduled. Then we believe by sometime in December, we will have FDA feedback. We will share the
So if you get a positive nod from the FDA in December, when will you be able to submit the new drug application?
So if everything goes well, we hope the agency will accept our NDA. So if the agency, gives feedback, go ahead and then submit NDA. Then our timeline is to submit NDA package in early Q2 2026.
Okay.
Sometime,
Like April,
sometime
like April.
around end of
Yeah.
April or May.
Okay.
That's what we are planning for. And then FDA would take 10 months standard review time.
Okay.
Then hope to have the brilaroxazine, our drug, get approval sometime by March 2027. Based on the data generated, we have very good cardiac safety profile.
Okay.
But historical data, if you look at some of the widely used antipsychotics, anywhere around 10 to 15%, some cardiac side effects are reported.
Okay.
In the post-approval as well, there are many drugs carry warning for that, like quetiapine and other drug. So we haven't seen any cardiac side effect in a concern related to cardiac. When we say particularly looking for cardiac side effect, we call QT prolongation. That's a major concern in this patient population. So by treating close to 900 patients, we do not see any such side effect.
So
based
you're
on
pretty
that,
much ready to go.
Based on that, we
Yeah.
believe this is very clean profile. Hope to have very favorable feedback from agency.
Would it make sense to run a study to look just at the negative symptoms? And if that's successful, how does that position brilaroxazine in the marketplace to, compared to what is already approved?
So if you look at the antipsychotics, developing a drug for schizophrenia is quite challenging. But if you can get approval for indication for schizophrenia, it has several other benefits as developer. Since schizophrenia is closely related to other mental illness like depression, bipolar, even the negative symptom is considered as a separate, can be considered as a separate indication.
Okay.
So using the data generated for schizophrenia, we can quickly go for expanding the label claim. In other words, additional indication. Basically, you are using the data support the additional indications. Yes, you need to have a additional indication. For example, at least to my knowledge, regulatory guidance for going for negative symptom. If you have a good activity generated on the secondary endpoints in schizophrenia trial, so with a single trial, well-controlled single trial for negative symptom, predominantly negative symptom patients, if the drug shows significant efficacy, with a single trial, you can get approval for one indication. That's what we intend to do, to develop this drug for negative symptom.
Reading about brain organoids, which are very tiny brains, and they're used to test CNS drugs, central nervous system drugs. Is that something that might be appropriate to brilaroxazine? And what do you think about using brain organoids to do some of this testing?
Yes,
Would it allow you to skip some of the human trial work and kind of get more advanced? Do you think?
I don't think at this time that technology field is that matured enough to bypass some of the clinical trial. But at this time, it is very early stage, the technology. This is, you can consider as an ex vivo study, kind of an extension of in vitro studies. So this only gives some additional information about possible activities in human, but it is not a replacement. But certainly, in the coming years, if the technology develops, it might certainly benefit in advancing or knowing some of the predictive clinical outcome.
Okay.
That's
it could help you just be more efficient, I guess.
Correct. Yeah.
And then that also brings up AI. And I think today it's hard to have a business conversation without bringing up AI. How do you see that playing a role in drug development, and potentially specifically with brilaroxazine or other schizophrenia drugs?
Yeah. Yes, certainly AI is a very useful tool, but I'm a bit skeptical about AI for the interventional therapy.
Okay.
This is a serious disease and it requires interventional therapy. But certainly, I'll give you an example. The technology using AI, we use the vocal biomarker is nothing but AI this thing, because machine learning can detect speech latency in this schizophrenia patients to
Right,
a
I think you
millisecond
actually
level.
used AI to help with
This
your
certainly
speech latency,
helped
right?
in the diagnostic level, and then where also the treatment worked or not. But to use that AI as a treatment could be challenging. But certainly AI has a place in the pharmaceutical field, and then it can certainly assist the drug discovery and development, but still.
And the evaluation of biomarkers too, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. Certainly, this is a tool to watch for further benefiting the whether it is a diagnostic area, but certainly it can help to speed up. But it can't be used, to my knowledge, as an interventional or a substitute for pharmacotherapy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I thought I'd bring up a financing question.
Sure.
There are a lot of warrants out there that expire soon.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them are in the money. There's also other opportunities for capital raises, including royalty financing and partnerships.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about what you're seeing there and on the financing side?
So, especially when you are very close to NDA, that is a good place to be with respect to raising money. So if we believe if the FDA feedback is positive, and then considering the unmet need in this space, so we may be able to find a good partner, or there may be we are ready for M&A type good, what we have seen in the recent past. But when I say good place to be, in a sense, say when you are closer to the market, you have multiple opportunities to finance beyond what we are now. So one is when I say financing multiple opportunities, obviously we would like to bring strategic money in, and then we look for actively either M&A or a good partnership for asset based. We have multiple assets in the company. And then other thing is, if you look at some of the companies in the last few years at a similar stage, opted for non-equity financing, either debt financing or royalty financing. That is very attractive capital at this stage to bring it to commercialize the product. We are at that stage. We would like to explore. So even if we go for equity-based financing, we believe with the positive outcome, market cap will respond appropriately. Some of the outstanding warrants, we have close to 80 plus, close to 90 million warrants outstanding, dollar worth of warrant, $90 million worth of warrants outstanding.
Okay. Yeah, if exercised.
They are in the range of anywhere 50 cents to $3.
Okay.
With the positive outcome, with market cap going up, we believe some of the warrants will exercise, especially close to 40 million worth of warrants. They expire in early June 2026. If they don't expire, they will expire. At least we believe around 40 million worth of warrants will exercise by May, June. That will be good amount of money for us to create value for commercialization.
Well, set you up to be in a good position for negotiation, and then also
Correct.
perhaps run that
Correct.
other study that you mentioned that for the negative symptoms.
Yep.
And all that. The market in schizophrenia, the M&A market has been pretty robust with several multi-billion-dollar deals. The most recent one was J&J for intracellular, and I think that was 14 plus billion.
14.9 billion.
Yeah,
right.
almost $15 billion there for that. So that's giving quite a value to their asset. And then we also saw one of the very few IPOs this year, LB Pharma, got done with a company that has their lead indication in schizophrenia. What does this say for the market and the value of brilaroxazine? All of these transactions taking place, and then I think there's also a lack of other assets out there besides what I mentioned, in development that could potentially be competitors to brilaroxazine.
All these developments are really positive developments for companies developing drug for schizophrenia or in general mental illness. So that clearly shows that there is a significant unmet need, and then the market size is very big. So now, when you mentioned the intracellular acquisition by J&J, 14.9, prior to that, if you look at the Corona Therapeutics acquisition by BMS or Cerevel by AbbVie,
right. Those were also multi-billion-dollar deals.
That created a momentum in that. In this space. But again, if you look at these two deals, muscarinic targets, I believe that was Wall Street bubble. Now, because it's a kind of a bubble, when I say bubble, it was an atmosphere created moving forward to, it should be non-dopamine serotonergic mechanism. That's the only way to go. That's the kind of an aura bubble created. But the failure of a trial, especially the Neurocrine trial, and then AbbVie trial failed in the muscarinic. Now, muscarinic area for schizophrenia, it's kind of I believe that hype is not there. And then acquisition of intracellular that reinforced the faith that what works for schizophrenia with a cleaner side effect, that's the way to go. Because intracellular is a traditional mechanism with a safety profile better than compared to other. Now, you brought about another company, LB Pharma. LB Pharma, if you look at that, is a repurposed drug of amisulfide, dopamine antagonist, and a serotonergic activity. It has a profile of kind of similar to other atypical antipsychotics. But still, it's a good IPO. That's clearly an indication that there is a huge unmet need. With a little bit improvement in the benefit to patients, still there is a room for new drug. So that is a good sign. The goal is, at the end of the day, regardless of the mechanism, and then we as a pharmaceutical company to bring next generation treatment that can benefit patients. So, of course, mechanism and other things are good for differentiation. Differentiation, if it is a clinical data, ultimately that benefits patients.
I thought I'd end on a question about the markets. They've been, 2025 has been a rough year, pretty much all around, unless you're one of the very few AI companies out there. What is your view on how things are going in the life sciences, and what do you see for 2026?
I feel 2026 will be the great year compared to 2025. Of course, 2025 has been quite challenging. Up lately, the new deals in especially mid-size and micro-cap companies have been quite challenging to raise capital.
Well, I think most of the M&A has actually been focused on larger companies, like Intra-Cellular, for example. Their drug is already approved. Right?
That is also, if you look at in the CNS space, it is in the last 5 years, there is a little bit diversion in the attention of development companies focused on psychedelics. Now that bubble has gone, to my knowledge, not many companies are focused on psychedelics. And then there are not many drugs are in development. If you look at hardly any drug in development for in the late stage or a phase 2, phase 3 level for major depressive disorder in the schizophrenia, but the market is huge. So there is a big vacuum. So any drug which has a incremental little bit improvement over currently available treatment, in my opinion, expect to do fairly well, even in the development stage companies will provide a good hope for future next generation drug. And then if somebody has a confirmatory data with the approval level, that speaks really clearly volume like ours, confirmatory data. So in general, I believe with the huge unmet need, CNS space, especially mental illness space, and the neurology space, Alzheimer's and Parkinson, there is a grow in the sense there is a patient population because longevity in patients' life expectancy is very high, 80 to 90 years people live these days. So neurology space, neuropsych space is there is a huge demand for developing new drug.
Yeah. Well, one of the nice things about brilaroxazine is that you have your lead indication in schizophrenia, but you've also got major depressive disorder, bipolar, and I think 4 or 5 others beyond that that you can develop. Assuming you get the schizophrenia approval done. So it sounds like you've got a long road ahead that you can follow, and a lot of potential successes as well.
Yep. So we believe, based on the data and then the historical data, the way some of the drugs developed, like aripiprazole, Abilify, or even to some compare with the Caplyta, initially developed for schizophrenia, then bipolar depression. We have really robust data for a negative symptom. Even if you look at the subscale for moderate depression scale, we have significant outcome, statistically significant for moderate subscale for depression. So we believe we can develop the drug for negative symptom and a bipolar disorder, especially bipolar depression, major depressive disorder. These are large indications with a significant unmet need. So we believe if we develop our drug to these indications, it will benefit patients immensely, besides schizophrenia. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we intend to do in the long run.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to you and Reviva.
Thank you.
Dr. Bhat, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
John.
joining us and sharing us the story about brilaroxazine and where you're headed next. Okay. To remind everybody, we had Dr. Laxminarayan Bhat, the CEO of Reviva Pharmaceuticals, ticker symbol RVPH.